What's up, Ego Hackers? Welcome to the C.S. Joseph podcast. I'm your host, C.S. Joseph. Today's topic, we're going to be discussing subconscious developed male masculinity. So, in general, subconscious developed male masculinity doesn't actually exist because they are ultimately effeminate men. This is because they rely on perception more so than judgment. And I explain this in detail and will be explaining this in detail, especially in season 41, which is available at school.com/CSJoseph, SKOOL.com/CSJoseph. It's one of the courses that are included with the base membership, so you'll be able to get access to that content right away. But SD male masculinity, when they are actually being masculine, it ends up giving them a benefit, a very large benefit. And that benefit is it actually ends up pushing them down the course of becoming an unconscious developed male, lone wolf, which is UDUF, and then a member of the male wolf pack, which is the unconscious developed subconscious focused male, which is the wolf pack male, right? And here's the thing, like a lot of people will be like, oh my God, C.S. Joseph, you're telling me to do wolf pack. I mean, clearly some of them are alphas, some of them are betas, some of them are omegas, right? And it's like, no, not really. Because in the UDSF male wolf pack, it's whatever situation the wolf pack is being confronted, the person who is highest in the hierarchy is based on his capabilities to handle the situation in the moment. So then he is elected the leader for that situation, and then everyone just follows their specific roles to be able to handle that. There is, and it's always the SD men who are asking about, like, oh my God, who's really in charge? Who made you in charge? And it's like, UD men don't give a shit about that. Because all UDSF men are like, we're our own kings, we have our own kingdoms, we have our own shit we gotta handle. My kingdom might be better at producing corn, and then your kingdom might be better at producing grapes. So, we're having a wine festival. Well, clearly your kingdom should be the one in the lead for it. Oh, we're having a harvest party and having a lot of corn and getting some silage together for our animals. Okay, well, the kingdom who specializes in corn is the better kingdom. You see what I'm saying? So no one gives a shit about alpha or beta roles. Because in general, women, when they perceive the UD male wolf pack, guess what? Women in general typically see all of those men as alphas compared to all the other SD male cucks out there who are, the 80% of men that women don't even notice, basically. And that's the problem. That's the problem. They don't even notice them. And they're not even really that much of a consideration. And that's what ends up happening, right? But there's one thing that an SD man can do to really kickstart their path of becoming unconscious developed, okay? And oftentimes, I really don't see SD men actually acting this way. I really don't, because it's all about how things look instead of how things are. And because of that, their mental positions oftentimes can be very flimsy, which means they don't really have solid ground. They may have the illusion of solid ground. They might be deluding themselves as a result of that. But in general, the SD men, like they don't often behave in this one masculine behavior. And if they did behave in this masculine behavior, it will kickstart their process of getting closer and closer to the rite of passage and having the epiphanies of the rite of passage. And then they finish their transformation into unconscious development. And these men actually can act accordingly and then eventually work on their path to become UDSF. Because remember, all men start out as imploders. All men start out subconscious developed. And they need isolation because they realize they have to earn attention instead of being handed attention. Well, single moms love handing these men attention, right? So they're used to that. So these boys are used to being given attention. But the men realize they have to earn every amount of attention that they have. They have to be worthy of attention. And that's a different mindset, right? Only through passing the rite of passage, where you realize your family and society will sell you out, they will sell you downriver, they will betray you, they don't actually care about you, you are disposable to them. When you start accepting that no one is coming to save you at all, no one's coming to save you, and it's only up to you and your safety and your happiness, you have to become the safety net. There's no safety net for you. You have to become the safety net for others. And that is a man who is worthy of attention, especially attention from women, right? But there is one behavior that an SD male can do and engage in that behavior. And that is to stick to his guns. That is to dig his heels in, to lock in. Let's say he has a belief about something and he stands up for what he believes in, regardless of the consequences. And that includes if even he is wrong. And then, if it is proven that he is wrong, and he actually spends time to think about how he's wrong, and then he adjusts his belief system, his core belief system, his ego investments, and then he stands up for what is right, and stands up for the truth, and sticks to his guns about these convictions, and doesn't let go of them, he will automatically, by default, not be accepted or acceptable to others. He will automatically no longer fit in, okay? And oftentimes I notice is that men who are SDSF, which is SDP, subconscious developed perceiving men, these men end up going authentic first, and they end up becoming SDJM. So they usually transform from SDP to SDJ, and then once they're SDJ, then they make the leap to UDJ, preferably. But sometimes they're SDP and they make the leap to UDP, and then they have to practice becoming more their authentic selves. So it's one of those two pathways to getting to UDJ for men. One of those pathways, right, within their life arc. And this is what is absolutely necessary. So, with that being said, try and pay attention. Try and pay attention to what you are trying to stick to your guns for. Like, what are your actual convictions? What do you actually believe in? This is what I tell subconscious development that I end up mentoring. It's like, write down your actual core belief system. Oftentimes you'll see that they don't even have one, which is quite frankly disgusting. And that's a serious problem, and that's what fatherlessness does to boys, right? Because they don't have any solid ground based on their beliefs. You need solid ground for your beliefs in order for you to go down the path of unconscious development as a man anyway, right? So, because here's the thing, like, if an SD male is able to actually have a core belief system that he believes in, and then he's willing to defend it, that means he's forced to be authentic. He's no longer fitting in and wearing a mask. It's kind of like someone who claims to be a Christian, ends up around non-Christian friends, and then ends up engaging in non-Christian behaviors, which is actually against his claimed belief system. This happens all the time when the SDP male is trying to be harmonious, and it's pretty disgusting that they act this way. Don't worry, I'm guilty of it too. Okay, we've all gone through this process. It is sin at the end of the day. I'm sure there's less sin in being your authentic self. So, but then the SD male ends up having his own convictions. He ends up having his ego investments. He's willing to defend them. And then if they're proven wrong, he's willing to accept new ones, right? This is the way. This is it. This secures his future in terms of his ability to become unconscious developed, because his core belief system is what his judgment and his decision making is going to be centered upon. There will be no judgment, there will be no decision making anyway, unless he's able to do this. But if a man does not know what his belief system is, this is like the agnostic man, for example, agnostic in basically everything, where is his actual solid ground? Where is his actual solid footing? If he does not have a belief system, he's a double-minded man. He's tossed back and forth in the waves of the sea, as criticized in the book of James in the Bible. Okay, this is not a good male perspective in terms of the male psyche, all right? So they need to learn how to stick to the guns. The problem is that an SD male can't stick to their guns if they don't know what their guns are, if they don't know what their core belief system is to begin with. And that's the biggest issue. They just don't know. They just don't know themselves enough. Actually, I had a guy yesterday tell me about how, oh, I'm not really self-aware. And it's like, really? You've been so babied in life and had everything taken care of in life for you because your subconscious developed that you're not even self-aware. It's because these are the men who don't even isolate themselves. Isolation is a gift. Charles Bukowski stated that. And it's because isolation teaches a man unconscious development, because when a man is left to his own thoughts, he has to actually give consideration to his core beliefs. He has to give consideration to his ego investments. But usually we drown it out with music and podcasts and doom scrolling, pornography, video games, all of these distractions. And this makes it difficult for the man to actually get to know himself and who he is, to the point where it's really tragic. He doesn't know himself. And because he doesn't know himself, he doesn't know what his core beliefs are. Thus, he doesn't know how to stick to his guns. Because sticking to his guns, the action of sticking to his guns, the action of standing up for his convictions, that action is ultimately what's going to lead him to become sharpened as a UDSF male, right? Which just doesn't really exist. Really good examples of UDSF males, by the way, the Tate brothers. They're UDSF. Myron Gaines, he's UDSF. Fresh Prince CEO is not UDSF. Nope. He's SDP. Poor guy. You know, but like, this is how it works. This is what subconscious developed men need to do in order to start the process. The problem is that they're so focused on their comfies, they're so focused on their safety nets, they fill their lives with these distractions so that they are never forced to actually get to know themselves. And once they get to know themselves, it is then they understand what their solid ground is. It is then that they understand what their beliefs are, and they will defend those beliefs no matter what. That leads to authenticity. And then eventually, it leads to them being willing to be open with sharing those beliefs with other people and articulating them and explaining why they have those convictions to begin with. That is unconscious development. That is being explosive, not implosive. They're no longer withholding anything, right? This is kind of like the mini rite of passage that leads them to be able to be considered for a rite of passage in life, because they have to figure out this thing first. And typically they don't. And this is ultimately why women end up divorcing these men rapidly, because 83% of divorce is initiated by women. And unless they're college educated, then it's 94%. And it's usually because these men don't know themselves. They're all about safety nets. But a woman doesn't feel safe about a man who monkey branches between safety nets. And therefore the woman ends up monkey branching between men and becoming whores and hoes. All right? That's a big problem. This is why I maintain, you can't really be UDSF as a man unless you have a very strong core belief system, preferably a real spiritual belief system. But let me tell you, it ain't the Catholic Church, it ain't Orthodox. Organized religion, quite frankly, is just a way for you to outsource your brain to church tradition instead of actual critical thinking, which is what the UDJ male is all about, critical thinking. You need to have critical thinking. But if you're relying on church tradition, then you're actually going to fail, because that church will fail you. So watch out for that. So Anyway, I hammered this point. Thanks for watching and listening, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.